Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Nordic Football Podcast. I'm Steve Wyss, and I'm with Jonathan Fadugba. And the closing end of the season is right upon us in both the Eliteserien and the Allsvenskan. We're going to start in Sweden because there's only 2 games left. And we are very, very close to securing a league champion, Jonathan. It could have happened tonight if Djurgården hadn't beaten GIF Sundsvall, but I don't think there's any real chance of that ever happening. But Häcken are top of the table by 6 points with 2 games remaining. They have had this clutch moment of the season, Jonathan. They have delivered the goods, and I know they obtained a massive result at the weekend. So, Jonathan, how are you doing, my friend? And I mean, this is quite extraordinary what's going on in Sweden this year.
Hi, Steve. Hi, everyone. Yeah, if you can detect the excitement in my voice and the kind of sort of happiness, it's because we've had a fantastic round in Sweden, and we're about to maybe have one of the sort of landmark moments in Swedish football history in the next week or so. Obviously, with potentially BK Häcken winning the title. So yeah, no, I'm good. I know you've been hobnobbing it with the Stars in Leeds this weekend, but so I know you'll be very happy. But I'm ready to go.
You are right, indeed. I have been at Ellen Road on Sunday, but I wish I'd probably been watching some of the Eliteserien games instead, such as the bad performances of Leeds against Fulham. But onto the Allsvenskan then, and I mean, we talked about probably a month ago now about the tough run of games that Häcken had coming up soon. And you were saying it's going to go to the last game. They're going to maybe scrape over the line. They have to fight for every single point. Fair to say that things have gone even better than expected. It couldn't have gone any better for them after the draw against Varberg away, where you said they're kind of starting to bottle it a little bit. They followed it with 4 straight wins. The latest against a Malmo side who just seem terrible right now, but they've done again in the face of adversity with a red card. Took us through Häcken against Malmo.
Yeah, so I guess probably I'll just read out the results from the weekend. I think this might be the best.
Is this a new trend on the podcast to read out?
Yeah, I'm going to
the
go for it because some people might not know what happened. But Sunday, Helsingborg 1, Degerfors 2. We also had a midweek. We've also had a midweek round the week before, which we haven't actually talked about. The big results from that, probably Djurgården beating Malmo away, came from 2-0 down to win 3-2 in the last minute. Unbelievable result and game, that one, to keep themselves in the title chase. Djurgården, fantastic resilience. GIF Sundsvall lost at home to Varnamo. Obviously, we'll talk about them later, but that was to be a crucial result. AIK went to BK Häcken BK Häcken went to AIK and won as well. Big result in Stockholm to continue their title charge. So there was some sort of big results. Degerfors beat IFK Göteborg 3-1 in that midweek round as well. Hammarby drew 1-0 with Sirius, absolutely bowled it. We'll talk about that in a minute. Degerfors, massive result to sort of get them a bit further away from relegation danger. But yeah, this round just gone. Helsingborg 1, Degerfors 2. So back-to-back wins for Degerfors. Unbelievable run of results just as the season's about to end. Elfsborg 2, Hammarby 1. Hammarby now out of the title race. Häcken 2, Malmo 1, which you just asked me about, and we'll talk about that first. And then Diff 4, GIF Sundsvall 0 this evening. Varnamo 1, Norrköping 1. Sirius 0, Kalmar 0. Mjällby 4, Varberg Boys 1. And IFK Göteborg 1, AIK 0, back-to-back defeats for AIK. So yeah, the Häcken Malmo game, Steve, it was well, I was covering this on Twitter, and I was saying, we went into this game knowing that if Häcken won and Djurgården lose or drop points against GIF Sundsvall, Häcken are basically champions. So pressure game for Häcken. They've gone to Stockholm and beaten AIK. Could they beat Malmo? The outgoing champions have had a terrible season, but it's still Malmo, still a big club. They can turn it on when they want. And, were there going to be any nerves? Well, Steve, 42 seconds it took for Häcken to score in this game. After 42 seconds into the lead, lovely move, carved Malmo open like a Christmas turkey. And Larsson slapped one into the bottom corner of the net. It was a beautiful strike. And from there, Häcken kind of controlled the match, to be honest. The game was kind of popular the game was most talked about because of the referee. I think Mr. Carlson, is it, the ref? A lot of comments about him, a lot of criticism I've seen for him. Basically, I think there was the most yellow cards in the game in the whole season. This one, I think it had, there was 1 red card for Yeremiev. I think there was 11 yellow cards. I might be right in saying. Might have to double check that, but there was at least, by half time, there'd already been at least 7 yellow cards, 5 for Malmo and 2 for BK Häcken. And I think there was a few more in the second half. I think there was maybe 3 or 4 more. Wasn't even really a dirty game, to be honest. But yeah, the kind of over-refereed match, maybe. But
10 yellows and 1 red.
Yeah, so it was the most in the Allsvenskan game
ridiculous.
this season. For me, Häcken showed their class in this game. They showed why they will, in my opinion, be champions. We have to keep a little bit of a lid on it because we can't really talk about it yet. But I think they will now get the job done. It would be a miracle if they didn't do it now, to be honest. But they showed the mark of champions in this game. Malmo were just poor, to be honest. Samuel Gustafsson got another one. Bejimo got one late on just to kind of maybe make it a bit more difficult. But don't forget, Häcken played most of this second half with 10 men. Yeremiev was sent off for a kind of bit of a shove / headbutt. To me, it was harsh. I think a yellow card would have been fine. But yeah, this referee was very sort of pinickety and wanted to be involved. But really, Steve, this team is a champions team in waiting. The way they carved open Malmo, to me, they have played the best football in Sweden this season. I think all in all, they've got 4 really tough games to end this season. AIK away, they've won. Malmo at home, they've won. They now, Steve, go to IFK Göteborg, their biggest rivals, to win the title this weekend in the Gothenburg derby for the first time in their history. This will be one of the biggest games in Gothenburg football history. Genuinely mean that. The magnitude of the game. Häcken have never won a title. This is like, Leicester City stuff. And we can talk about the evolution of Häcken. I've actually spoken about them a lot on this podcast. But I have to say, I'm absolutely gutted I can't be in Gothenburg this weekend. Like, I would pay a lot of money to be at that game. Let's put it that way. But I think it's going to be a classic. It's going to be a massive game. And there's so many storylines that could come out of it. But yeah, the bottom line of it is BK Häcken can go to Gothenburg this weekend they can cross the bridge and know that if they get a win against the IFK, they are champions for the first time in their history.
Do you know what? There was a very I did a video for the Nordic Football Podcast, November the 10th last year. Some football manager save suggestion ideas, and the video was entitled "Gothenburg Glory." I don't know if you saw this one, Jonathan, but basically, I actually put in I'm looking at the itinerary of the episode here, and it says the city has collectively won over 25 Swedish national titles, but none since 2007. And that is the only one this century, and that was IFK. So I was basically saying, pick a team from Gothenburg and end this drought of titles in Gothenburg. Well, in real life, it looks like there's a very good chance that drought could end, incredibly, and potentially in a derby match against the IFK. I've got to be honest, the IFK are going to win this game, in my opinion. There's no way they're going to let Häcken win the title on their own patch, Jonathan. It's not going to happen. I will bet on IFK Göteborg this weekend. I've seen them in their last 2 home games claim surprise wins as the underdog, and I think it'll be the same again. It's not going to be this easy for Häcken. They're not just going to breeze over the line here, and if they do, then fair play to them. But I think it's a really great story for Häcken, this smaller team from Gothenburg, who, they say, 1 point away. Even if they lose it, though, they should really get what they need on the last game of the season at home to Norrköping, in my opinion. So, I mean, look, good luck to them. I'm not saying I want them to win the title, but if they get the gold medal, then they'll deserve it. The best team wins the league. So, a prediction from you: are they going to win the title from here, or are they going to blow it?
They're going to win the title. I think they will go to Gothenburg and win. I think they'll be champions. They've proved it many times. I think we have to talk about BK Häcken a little bit. Don't know if we want to wait till they actually get it done.
Well, yeah, I think we'd best not put the mockers on them here, had we? I mean, but I'm sure, get your piece ready, Jonathan, because a
Put it
tribute
this way,
to...
Steve, they need 1 point. And although, like you said, I mean, there's already been comments this evening, I think, from Sebastian Eriksson, who said, I will fight to make sure this does not happen. The EF4 player. He says, we have to win that match. It is an Allsvenskan match and a derby match. Some games are bigger than others. But it's clear we want to beat Häcken. We won against them away from home. And if we can win 6 points against the Swedish champions, then it's not such a bad season. That's what Micke Stara has said. Former Häcken manager, by the way. So he's actually come out and said, to be honest, it's not a big rivalry. They asked, there was a question after the game, like, how big a rivalry is it after the AIK game tonight, which they've won? And Sebastian Eriksson's come out and said, it's not a big rivalry. He said, I dare not think about it too much. I think we're going to win that game. I don't know what to say. I don't want it. I've been a Blavit fan, which means, Gothenburg fan all my life. I will fight to prevent it from happening. But he says that the rivalry is not big. And he says, would it hurt for them to win the gold in your back garden? He basically says, they've done really well and they've worked hard for many years. They are where they are and we are where we are. It's not a strange feeling, but you should think it should be the other way around, really. We should be the ones winning the title. But he says, it's not like that. But again, they will not be allowed to win here on Sunday. So there's a big...
They don't need to win, though, do they? They need to get a draw. That's a draw's enough for them, in fairness. So,
but the thing is, this is the storyline, Steve, that we are going to come back to after this game this weekend. Because when he says it's not a big rivalry, I'll give you the context of this. They're like basically in Gothenburg, Hisingen. This is where I lived, by the way, when I lived in Gothenburg. I lived in Hisingen. I lived like 10 minutes from the stadium. So for me, this is like almost personal. Like, I'm actually almost emotional not to be there. Like, I would love to be at this game. I would get the little tram from my house to BK Häcken's ground, 2 trams, be there in like 15 minutes, and walk across to the stadium. But basically in Gothenburg, you got main Gothenburg and then you got Hisingen, which is like where Häcken are based and where the stadium is, and it's a little region. And they basically like the like Gothenburg kind of looks a little bit down on Hisingen, and there's a feeling like Häcken are basically just little upstarts. They're kind of looked down upon in Swedish in Gothenburg football, let alone Swedish football. They don't have a huge amount of fans. I think they took 67 fans to AIK, which is, not much for a team that's going for the title. Obviously, there's a lot of sort of snarky comments on Twitter about that. They're not a big club by any means. And so when Eriksson says that, it's not a big rival, they're not a big rival, that's like a little pointed comment. There's a bit of arrogance there on that and there's the feeling from Häcken fans is like they're looked down on like that, and there's that bit of arrogance from EF4 and people in Gothenburg towards them. So that is a comment I'm pretty sure Per-Matti Sandgren might even, he might want to stick that on the dressing room wall and say, if they're not rivals, then show them what we are. But I think Häcken have been so good this season in big games. Like you say, they did lose the first derby, so we'll see what happens. But I can't really stress enough what a big potential achievement. This is a bit like Glimt, who we talked about in Norway for quite a few years, winning their first ever title.
You described it as Leicester City-esque, didn't you, in a recent podcast?
Yeah, it's going to be similar to that. And we'll talk about it. We had Sonny Carlson, didn't we, their former sporting director, on the podcast many years ago. If you go on the search bar and Google it, you can listen to that interview. I went behind the scenes at Häcken, interviewed the sporting director, sat in his office, had a coffee with him. He's no longer there. They've got a whole new backroom team now. But this is something that's been growing for a while, thanks to the Gothia Cup a little bit, the money that's been injected through that. And the club has slowly grown. But it would be like a bit of a glimpse situation to actually win a title. I think not many people can believe it, but it could happen as of this weekend.
So, Häcken on 60 points. Djurgården have rebounded after a run of terrible defeats. They've won 2 in a row now. They came from behind to beat Malmö in the midweek round and then beat GIF Sundsvall 4-0 on Monday evening. Only they can deny Häcken the title now. Djurgården have got to win their last 2 to have any chance of getting the gold medal. Of course, they're away to Norrköping and the home to Mjällby. Elsewhere behind them, Hammarby, Kalmar, AIK, they've all been dropping points recently. Looks like Djurgården are going to be set for second place now, Jonathan, and they can sort of focus on their Europa Conference League campaign, hopefully qualify out of that group, probably win that group, actually, with a good finish. And the rest of the league away, it's it's shaping up. I mean, I guess we're sort of going to give Djurgården second place here. Third place, though, it's up for grabs and the final European spot. Who do you think is going to get there? Because teams have been dropping points.
Well, third is up for grabs. It's looking like second will be Diff. I thought they would win the title, to be honest. So I really think the European football has kind of stopped them a little bit. So I think that's hampered them slightly. And you'll never know. We'll never know. Hammarby are now in third, 50 points, obviously 10 points behind Häcken. They're officially out of the title race. They absolutely bowled it this week, Steve. And I've seen a lot of comments from Hammarby fans and even a lot of followers on the pod came out and said it's basically what Hammarby do. Sorry, almost like the Spurs of maybe that reputation of kind of bottling things when it gets tough. Saw some comments about Cifuentes' style of football as well, sort of saying that they don't go for the jugular when they're doing well in games. They're too passive when they get ahead in games, which I can see that criticism, to be honest. I think they've really lost a massive opportunity to win this title. I think, Häcken have never won it, but Hammarby have only, they've barely won it much themselves, and they have a much bigger fan base than Häcken. And I think the Stockholm team, for example, will be a lot more happy with Häcken winning it than they would have if Hammarby had won it. But they've just been too weak. 2 wins in the last 10, I think. 9 maybe.
And
Hammarby serious. They absolutely bowled that game last week, midweek. They were comfortable in that match. It was 1-0. They had all the possession, and then an absolute howler from Oliver Dovin, who I've praised a lot, the young goalkeeper. Well, you could argue it was the defense's fault, but basically rolls it out. Trying to play that kind of build from the back style of play, rolls the ball out to a man who doesn't realize he's being pressed, who literally Stenson just ran him from behind him, nicked the ball off him before he could receive it, and just tapped it into a pretty much empty net. Comedy of night errors for that. And that goal basically meant it was a 1-1 draw against Sirius when they had been completely in control of it. And that really summed up their season, to be honest. They've then followed that up, losing to Elfsborg. Obviously, in the last minute, Noah Soderberg goal, 89th minute to lose that, and that puts them out of the race. And those 2 matches just sum them up. They're too flaky when it counts. The Berisha signing, I know we've got some listener questions. The Berisha signing doesn't seem to have worked. He was dropped in a recent game, and I think there's that feeling that although he's quite a good character in the dressing room, and I know he came with a lot of fanfare, has he really had a big impact? I'm not sure. Has the manager chopped and changed it too much? They made a lot of signings. Have any of them really done well since the summer? Likes of David Concha, and they've signed quite a lot of players. Shaquille Pinas. My overriding feeling, Hammarby really bowled it, especially these last 2 games. They unquestionably bowled it. And the interesting thing is, Mahan the GAs actually came out and said it himself. He said that the team doesn't have enough kind of leaders and basically that winning mentality. Now, don't forget, DA's kind of put in a transfer request, pretty much was desperate to leave in the summer. The club didn't let him leave, and obviously he was dropped from the team for a while, worked his way back into it, but he's come out and basically slammed the club. I know he's probably on his way out, so he feels he can get away with it, but pretty damning comments to say that about a dressing room that you're part of, basically. But he's kind of right. They just haven't had that leadership to get it over the line.
Yeah, very, very disappointing, I think, from Hammarby's perspective. I'm just looking back to this FM video suggestions that I gave. And I talked about a team from Gothenburg called E26 BK. And they're actually in Superettan now. They're in 9th place. So they're ahead of Ågreet. So as this thing stand, this team called E26 is the 3rd best team from the Gothenburg region in terms of ranking. So strange things are going on in Gothenburg football these days. I mean, Gais, I don't know. They're certainly in the 3rd tier. I don't know how they're doing this year. Ågreet are in relegation trouble again. Häcken could be winning the title. What the heck is going on? No pun intended. Yeah, I mean, I say into that top 3 could be. Hammarby against Kalmar coming up soon, and I noticed Hammarby are odds-on favourites to win the game. I'm not sure about that because Kalmar can be quite hard to break down. And Malmo could potentially finish as low as 9th this season now, Jonathan, which would be insane. Let's have a look down towards the bottom of the table, though, and there's been some developments because it looked like it had been decided who the bottom 3 was going to be. GIF Sundsvall, they are relegated. Helsingborg are going down again. The team now in the relegation playoff spot is Varberg, because Degerfors have found some incredibly good form out of nowhere. They've got a 1-point lead over Varberg, Jonathan, who I'm not saying Varberg have sunk like a lead balloon or anything here, but they're suddenly under a lot of pressure after a bad run of results.
Yeah, and I did say on a recent episode, Steve, that I think Sirius and Varberg could get sucked into this. I even said North.
You did. You certainly did.
Yeah, and it has come to transpire. Degerfors has been in fantastic form lately. They've really found the character. They signed the likes of Jurgic, and funnily enough, I saw a few comments saying that Hammarby lacked players like Jurgic. Obviously, he used to be at Hammarby, and I know this season we've laughed at him a lot when he punched the dressing, when he punched the hoardings at half time when they lost 6-0 to Elfsborg. I remember that game at half time. Got sent off in that game, I think, as well. Obviously, got caught clubbing as well. I think we criticised them at that point. But I'll say one thing about Jurgic. He is a fiery character, and sometimes you want that in your dressing room. You know what I mean? Someone just got a bit of fight, a bit of bite about them. You might just rally people and rile people. Do you know what I mean? And I saw a few comments from sort of supporters saying that they kind of missed that Jurgic style leader in Hammarby. I can kind of empathise with that. I can see it. They haven't lost a game since August, Steve. Degerfors have been really they're eking out sort of either draws or narrow wins. And the only game they actually have won by more than one goal in recent weeks was against IFK Göteborg 3-1, and then Djurgården they beat 3-0. Incredible result. But they've got 2 back-to-back wins. This was a crazy end because Jurgic was the one who basically relegated Helsingborg. Helsingborg 1, Degerfors 2. They took the lead in the 4th minute. Gustav Lagerbilka, Amir Al-Hamraoui equalised for Helsingborg, but they knew that they had to not lose this game, otherwise they'd be relegated. They threw everything at it, Steve, and it was basically everyone up for a corner, up for a set piece. Sorry, get hit on the break, and Jurgic just countered and basically had an empty net, fired it in, and that was the end of good night Helsingborg. They will be relegated. And probably the only good thing that's happened to Malmo this season, really, is seeing their big rivals go down again. I think that rivalry is always there. It's been a terrible
They're
season.
the biggest yo-yo club around now, Helsingborg in Sweden, aren't they?
Yeah, it's been a terrible season for football in Skåne in general. Helsingborg and Malmo have been pretty poor, and Helsingborg's future is now confirmed. We also know that GIF Sundsvall will be relegated. I don't think we've talked about it, but they've been a bit of a nightmare. They've actually Forrest Lasso. We've talked about their defender, the sort of interestingly named American Forrest Lasso. He's been dropped for the most recent game. There was a bit of controversy around that. He posted a clip after the relegation was confirmed on Instagram of his season highlights. Now, not sure if that's the wisest thing to do, but basically, he got slaughtered for it by.
Hold on a minute. This is a team that's got 14 points. They've conceded 73 goals. He's a defender, if I'm right, correct. And he's posted a video of his season highlights. I mean, is that a joke or what? I mean, what?
Brian Cloughout came out and said, I don't know what social media is. It's Kardashian shit and stuff like that. But no one is bigger than the club and the team. That's all I have to say. But basically, the reports coming out of Sweden are that, yeah, he posted a clip on Instagram with his season highlights, and then he had to delete it because he got so much criticism from supporters. And then he's been left out of the game tonight. It hasn't made much difference. They lost 4-0 at Djurgården. But yeah, he's been an important part of the squad, really. So maybe he's looking for a move out of there. But yeah, they're gone and down. There's been an announcement, I think, from GIF Sundsvall's sporting director. He's basically said they'll review everything in the closed season. They'll have to make some changes. There's rumours a couple of players might be sold. I think Forrest is one. I think Ronaldo Damus is another, and Sako Latupa are the three that they might sort of try and sell to make a bit of money. So maybe Forrest is trying to put himself in the shop window before the season's actually done. But yeah, safe to say it didn't go down well with fans of GIF Sundsvall.
I think they need Ted Lasso, don't they, rather than Forest Lasso at GIFs. I'll tell you what, if I do an FM suggested videos for Sweden, I think GIF Sundsvall is definitely going to be one of the clubs. Take GIF Sundsvall, the most northerly Allsvenskan club, to glory. I reckon that'll be a good one for anyone, because they've
we
just
did have a
been
listener
terrible.
question about who to be on FM, and I think I posted. I sent him the link to your.
I'll do
video.
one. I will do it. The
Just
FM officially gets released. The beta version's out already.
Yeah,
But I think
did very well that video.
full version gets released at some time in November. So I'll do one. I think GIF Sundsvall will be definitely one of the suggestions. Just on Varberg, because we hardly ever talk about them. Obviously, there's still 2 games left. There's only 1 point in it. I mean, what sort of state are they in? If they were to finish 14th, would you be backing them to win the playoff against possibly Osters? It looks like in the Superettan.
I've not watched much of Osters, so I'd find it really hard to comment on that if it is going to be them. But I will say that I think Varberg have been pretty poor. Their squad is too big. I always say it. You just don't know who's going to play. I feel like the honeymoon's over with Varberg. I've barely watched them this season, and when I do, they're not that great. They had a great win against AIK, which was good, I think, and they had a couple of highlights, but they shouldn't be at this level, to be honest. Like, they're punching way above their weight, and it's kind of one of those ones where after a certain amount of time you're treading water basically to just stay above. You're trying to stay above water basically, and I think it's just catching up to Varberg now. They don't have the resources. They've made some good sort of sales in recent years. I think they sold a player to Dijon, didn't they? The left back.
Traore, I think.
Yeah,
might have been.
He was a good player. So they have brought in some money with some sales. Obviously, Salmani, for example, they sold for good money to Hammarby. He's now gone on, I think, to Israel. But the end of the day, I think they're just treading water and they're struggling. They've taken a pumping against Mjällby tonight, and I don't
4-1 against Mjällby. That's more goals than Mjällby have scored all year, isn't it? Nearly. They're not known for battering sides like that, are they?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, with 2 games to go, they've got to play.
They got Malmo at home, which is winnable right now, in fairness. And then they've got, I think the last game is Sirius, I think it is.
Yeah, Sirius away. So, I mean, that could be a decider. I mean, Sirius have got a potentially valuable point against Kalmar in that 0-0 draw. But yeah, I mean, even Norrköping is still on points. They're not out of it.
Norrköping still need something.
Still need 1 point to be sure, pretty much. So we know that it will definitely be Helsingborg and GIF Sundsvall going down. Varberg are currently in that relegation playoff in 14th place. Degerfors are in good form. Sirius are not in good form, but maybe they just about got enough points, 4 points. I think Degerfors have got the next 2 games of Varnamo at home and Malmo away. So I think those are 2 actually quite tough games. We have to give a massive shout out to Varnamo for staying up. Well done to David Salini and Kim Helberg. They've done a fantastic job there to keep that team up, because they have, I think, arguably the lowest budget in the league. So we talk about Varberg, but they've had that Allsvenskan money for 2-3 years now. Varnamo have done it with no money and hardly any staff. So if you go back and listen to that interview with David Salini, he really does go into the details on Varnamo. And for them to stay up this season, it's been incredible. Antonsson's been linked with a move to Norrköping now. Looks like he probably will leave at the end of the season to get a much bigger move. But he's been a revelation for them. Second top scorer in Allsvenskan.
We will round off this section with a couple of questions. I'll move to Carl Woodgate's question soon. But sticking with the theme of relegation, our man Team Overs, a very loyal supporter of the podcast down the years, asks, are any Division 2 surprises for the season? Has to be Ostersund facing relegation 2 years in a row, right?
Yeah, good to see you, Mr. or Mrs. Team, or Mr. and Mrs. Team Overs. I think actually, to be honest, I know it might sound a surprise, but I think a lot of people thought they would get back-to-back relegations. The finances have been a nightmare, obviously, since the Daniel Schimberg trial. They've just had a lot of financial issues. Osterson probably lucky maybe not to some of the penalties they've faced, and maybe they've kind of, some people feel they've got away with it. Basically, the money's gone, and they just don't have the resources now to sort of sustain it. They're on a downward trend anyway. Just, such a bad few years for them in terms of losses of players, losses of management staff, the whole sort of turmoil around the financial scandal, that Schimberg sentenced to prison, all that kind of thing. So it's not really a surprise. I mean, maybe they could have stayed up this season, but I think there's a general feeling that they're going to go back to where they've come from before Potter came along, which was kind of like the 4th division. So yeah, unfortunately that fairy tale is well and truly kind of dead. If they stay up, it'd be, I think, a good achievement for them. But even if they stayed up, I think the finances mean that they'd still probably struggle next season. In terms of surprises, you got Bromma Poikin obviously on the verge of a return back to Allsvenskan. They were in 3rd tier not long ago under Sean Constable. Now they're looking at maybe, I think it might even be back-to-back promotions after back-to-back relegations. So Bromma Poikin, you said that, you talked about Helsingborg being a yo-yo club. I think Bromma Poikin are the ultimate yo-yo club because they do it. They go down, 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 and then up, up, up. But yeah, I think hopefully that answers your question. I think we did talk a little bit about 2nd division teams last week as well. But yeah,
I worry for teams that go down from Allsvenskan because Örebro down in 12th. Oskarsson's obviously in trouble. Dalkurd bottom of the table, and they were Allsvenskan not too long ago. And I've seen several other sides have gone down and down again, not necessarily straight away, but it can be a difficult relegation into Super 8, and I think it's a really competitive league. And one other question, it was from Carl Woodgate. Can Häcken build on this title? He puts in brackets, barring a crazy end for next season, or do you think they'll lose key players like Jeremiev and Rigard?
That's a great question. Obviously, they've not won it yet, so maybe we could. Obviously, I have to curb my enthusiasm a little bit, but they do have a bit of money. Häcken. We'll talk about it if they do win the title. We'll talk about their whole story. They do have the finances to potentially keep players. Who did you mention? Rigard. I think Rigard will have a lot of interest, but he's only just been there for 1 season, so I imagine he might want to stick around. Jeremiev already left and came back. I think I'm right in saying that. He obviously went to Germany. Didn't really work out for him. He has had interest, obviously, with the amount of goals he scored. But I think he might think to himself, I've already been abroad and it didn't work out for me, so maybe I should stick around. I mean, if they win the league, they're going to have Champions League football for the first time in their history. So I think a lot of these players might fancy a European journey. I think the big issue for them might be their manager, actually, Steve. I think Per-Matti Togmo, we have to talk about him at a later date. He's done an unbelievable job. The way he's turned that club around. I mean, one observation I had about Häcken in the Malmo game, the way they just open up the way they open up spaces to get into the penalty area is really impressive. They sort of have midfielders who can play into the half spaces. They can either tee up the sort of wing backs, the full backs who can get forward and put crosses in, but they also have sort of wingers who can cut inside or go outside. Sadiq, he was really dangerous against Malmo, I thought. Then they've got a striker who can finish things off in a 6-yard box or a penalty area, Jeremiev. They've got they've got technical midfielders who can sort of go past the man. They're press resistant. They can sort of receive it on the half turn, play passes into those half spaces, and in behind defenses. The way they turn defenses, like AIK and Malmo, is really, I think the coach needs a huge amount of credit for what he's done there, because they are the real deal in terms of the way they attack teams. Malmo at certain points of that game just didn't know whether they were coming or going. It wasn't like a kind of, I don't think this season's been like a fluke. They've outplayed a lot of teams. They really, really have. I think it will be a collective look at them, and people will say, okay, who can we take? I think you might look at someone like Sadiq. You might look at someone like, I think the fullbacks might have a little bit of interest. I know they're both quite young. Maybe, obviously, the Gustafssons have come back from being abroad. So maybe, I think a few of them will say, listen, I fancy a Champions League crack. But maybe 1 or 2 fringe players, or 1 or 2 players who aren't maybe necessarily full-time regulars all the time might get a little bit of a look in. But really it's a story of a collective effort from Häcken. It's not like one huge star that's kind of carried them to the title, although Jeremiah's goals obviously have been a massive part.
Thank you very much for your questions there, Team Overs and Carl Woodgate. Some more questions to come in the second half of the episode where we're going to talk about Eliteserien matters. Join us.
Just got to interrupt you there, Steve. I know that there's a certain listener who will be wondering. I need to just talk about Kalmar for a minute. Henrik Rydström's come out tonight and said that he will stay. There's a lot of rumors about also the Mjällby manager potentially maybe going to AIK. But basically, Rydström came out this evening and said, I will be staying. I've extended till I don't even know when. It's 2024, by the way. But he has basically said, regardless of whether they get sort of a qualifying place for the Conference League, and to be honest, I would love to see Kalmar in the Conference League. I think that would be deserved. I really hope they get it. I hope that I think that the seasons that AIK, the likes of Malmö, I mean Malmö are out of it now, but they've been so poor this season, some of the big boys, that I really hope Kalmar can maybe grab that last spot. Not sure if they will. I think that Hammarby game is a tough game for them. But I think that'll be a good game. And Rydström is going to have a lot of interest, and people keep asking him, is he staying? He said he's enjoying it. I'm enjoying myself. I have an incredibly stimulating job. I know that Wesson on Twitter did say that his family or his children kind of are settled in the area. So yeah, good news maybe for Kalmar fans. Can they get that job done and get that Conference League spot? Because I think it would be really good for the likes of Ove Pettersson, a good friend of the pod, who we love his positive vibes on the videos. And of course for Wasson, who's a loyal supporter of this podcast. So let's see if they can get it done. But I think Rydström has said, he's come out and said he would stay. We'll see. I'm not sure if I 100% believe it, because there's some huge jobs now available in Allsvenskan potentially. But he said he'll stay.
Yeah, I can just imagine getting into the Conference League and drawing someone in, say, Azerbaijan, and that he's on the plane supporting Kalmar that far east. It would be good to see them get into Europe, wouldn't it? I must say, still a chance always to win the Swedish Cup as well. So Malmö are going to have to win the Swedish Cup now, aren't they, to qualify for Europe? So plenty to fight for. And like I said, we will be talking about Norwegian matters in part 2 of the episode. So stick with us, and we'll see you again very soon.
Welcome to part 2 of this week's episode of the Nordic Football Podcast. My name is Jonathan Fadugba, and I'm joined as ever by Steve Wyss. Switching to Norway now. There's not too much to talk about. We talked a lot about Molde last week. So if you haven't listened to that last week's show, I thought we had some good feedback on it. And Steve, you did a very good job in analysing Malmö. I've got Sweden on the brain. Analysing Molde, the champions, and of course, Erling Moe. So if you haven't listened to the episode, you want to know more about Molde, who are now 15 points ahead at the top of the table. They are champions already. Just go back and listen to that episode, because Steve gave a great job of it in part 1 of that show, pretty much at the beginning of it, so you can tuck straight into it. I think the podcast last week on YouTube is also time-stamped, so you can listen to that relevant section. Follow us on YouTube with the Nordic Football Podcast. Just type it into your browser and on YouTube, and it should come up. And then hit that subscribe button, please. We're nearly at 500 subscribers on YouTube, which is great. But yeah, Molde are already champions. There's not a huge amount to talk about this week, really. A couple of teams are nearly safe. The likes of HamKam, good friend Tom Dent on the pod, nearly there. Viking are sort of plundering a little bit, I know. But I think the main thing we just wanted to talk about is something we discussed last week, Steve, that Molde-Rosenborg game. We announced that there'd be no guard of honour. Rosenborg put out a very spiky statement, which we had a good chuckle about and a bit of a debate. How did it all go down, Steve, on the day?
It's like I said, I think they were their own worst victim in this game. They'd have been better off keeping their mouth shut ahead of it, because I think it fired up Molde more, and Molde won the game 2-1. And the manager was not happy at the end. Kjetil Rekdal said, the way we conceded the first goal is a disaster. Away from home against the league champions, and with the atmosphere as it was, we let them get away with a flying start. We are just not good enough or mature enough to come away with the points against the league champions right now. And it said it's no coincidence that Molde have had 14 victories in a row, because you can see that the level that they're at right now, and the level that he said that Rosenborg need to aspire to. So disappointing from a Rosenborg point of view. I mean, it was a good test for them. Molde was certainly fully fired up and fully motivated. They're always going to want to beat Rosenborg at home, even more so now. And yet another win. I mean, this is incredible. That they could end up with 78 points, which would not be far off the Bodø Glimt total of, I think, 81 they got the other year. So we've had some exceptional league champions here in Norway in the last 3 seasons, Jonathan. Really, last 4 seasons, to be honest. So it's an absolute trainers, this Molde team right now. They've got bigger fish to fry in the Conference League in the next 2 games, 2 crucial games for them, which they want to get through. But it wouldn't surprise me now if they finish the season with 17 straight wins. And Rosenborg, now they've got a massive game coming up against Bodø Glimt at home for them, so to see how they get on in that. I suspect they'll do better in that game because they've been really good at home this season. But Lillestrøm are only just behind them now by virtue of goal difference. So Rosenborg have to win their last 3 games to guarantee themselves third. And that's pressure.
Yeah, your man, Datro Fofana, was on the score sheet. Decent finish in the box, right-footed. Bryn Hilton scored the first goal. I don't know what the keeper's doing. He's flown off his line here. It's a bit like watching, I don't know,
Elan Meslier, the way Leeds are playing right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the Bayern goalkeeper. Completely forgot his name.
Neuer.
Yeah, it's like Neuer flying out. Completely missed it, and Bryn Hilton just taps it in. Well, not taps it in. He's like near the halfway line, but he just fires into an empty net. And then Leo Kornic, formerly of Diff, got a goal back for Rosenborg, but too little, too late. As you said, maybe the manager not pleased with how they performed. And this Molde team just continues to go from strength to strength. They really are impressive, aren't they? They really have built up a good head of steam. Steve, I'm going to just ask you a couple of questions now, because we normally do a European preview, but we haven't done that yet. I feel like talking about the league was more relevant, but let's do it now. So I'm going to very quickly and concisely, Steve, I'm going to ask you predictions. Zurich, Bodø Glimt.
Yeah, Bodø Glimt win the game.
And if they do win that game, they'll have 7 points. Zurich are already on 0 points. They're already out. But Glimt are in 3rd place. They need to sort of close the gap on PSV, who are 2nd. Arsenal at the top with 4 wins from 4, and they are pretty much through. But yeah, Glimt, that's a massive game for them, actually. They need to keep the pressure on. So good luck to Glimt. I'm going to ask you for, I'm sure you don't want to predict HJK Roma, but we've also got Malmo, Union Saint-Gilloise. Malmo are already out. They've had a nightmare season. If you haven't listened to us talk about Malmo, go back to last week's episode in part 2. Did a bit of a breakdown on Malmo and their goings on, but yeah, they're well out of it. Nothing to play for really there. They can't even, they can't go anywhere really with that one. They got 0 points from 4 games, and Union Saint-Gilloise are top with 10 points. So I think maybe they might get a draw, but to be honest, Malmo aren't up to much these days. But let me just ask you quickly about the other game in the Conference League. What is your prediction in that game that Molde will play against Djurgården at home this Thursday?
It's funny you should mention the HJK game. I know someone who's tipped Roma to win 0 in that game, but Molde will beat Djurgården, in my opinion. I think they're the better team. I think strange things happened in the Stockholm reverse fixture. There was red card. Djurgården just seemed to, the crowd had a big part to play in that match. But I think fundamentally Molde are much the better team, and I would expect them to win that fixture.
Yeah, they need to win if they want to top the group. Diff are currently top with 4 games, 10 points. They've been remarkable in Europe. Got Djurgården. They've really shown
inspired.
Up. They haven't lost a game yet. And Ghent, they like to steal players from our league, Steve. But how are they doing in Europe, eh? How are they doing? 3rd place. Shamrock Rovers bottom.
Let's hope Shamrock Rovers beat them, and we can get both our teams through.
Yeah, you can steal our players, but you can't steal our swag. Again, that would be a nightmare if they don't make it out of this one. they won't live that one down from us anyway. Yeah, my prediction is I think Molde will win as well. I think Djurgården, they're okay. They've rested a few players tonight. Actually, Edvardsen wasn't in the team against Sundsvall for some reason. But yeah, I think Molde will probably narrow win, maybe 2-1, 3-1. Yeah, so that is that. Let's move on. Relegation battle.
Yeah.
Touch on that.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, if you look at the form table for all of the bottom 6, actually, and it doesn't look very good right now. No one is getting points, Jonathan, it seems. HamKam drew.
Before you do that, yeah, HamKam drew. Before you do that, let me just read out results, actually, if that's okay.
Yes.
From the weekend. Also, we had a midweek game as well. Jerv lost against Arlesund at home, 1-0. We then had HamKam 1, Godset 1, as you just mentioned there. Odd 2, Vålerenga 1. Arlesund then got another back-to-back win against Sandefjord. Glimt 5, Kristiansund 0. Kristiansund second bottom. Jerv 2, Viking 2. Jerv at bottom, of course. Haugesund 0, Lillestrøm 1. Haugesund just above water in 12th. But they are 10 points clear of relegation, so they aren't going to go down this season. So they're safe. Salzburg 1, Tromsø 1 in mid-table-ish. And then Molde, obviously 2, Rosenborg 1, as we mentioned. So, yes, carry on, Steve. We've got HamKam, Sandefjord, Kristiansund, Jerv at the bottom 4.
Yeah, HamKam drew against Strømsgodset at home, which I think is a poor result for them, actually. I really strongly fancied HamKam to win that game because Godset have got about 7 or 8 injuries at the moment. It was a really good time to face them. Strømsgodset are not very good away from home. They got nothing to play for. It was a great chance to win, but they could only draw again. And 13 draws in 27 games is incredible number of draws. It's not a league that is known for draws down the years. So to have that many is remarkable. It's an okay point, though, because yet again, the teams below them just have done nothing. Sandefjord lost once more to Arlesund, so Arlesund are now fully safe. Kristiansund lost 5-0 to Bodø Glimt. Okay, I think that was expected. Jerv got a draw against Viking. So none of those teams are officially down yet. The next match is a big one, Sandefjord against HamKam. And I think if Sandefjord are going to have a chance of surviving automatically, they're going to have to win that game. But at the same time, they've got to look over their shoulder because Kristiansund, I looked at Kristiansund's fixtures. They do have 3 favourable games, and the last match is Jerv against Kristiansund. So someone's going to get some points there. But Sandefjord are dropping like a lead balloon. Like I said, this no win in about 12 games. I think HamKam should just about get over the line, but this is a high-pressure game coming up against Sandefjord. Will it be a draw again? It probably will, won't it? The way it goes with HamKam, but yeah, there's some poor football being played in the bottom half of the table at the moment, Jonathan. Unfortunately,
some poor football teams trying to survive. You know that is the life, Steve.
There's pressure, but I mean, look, there's still plenty to fight for. 14th is up for grabs. I mean, Jerv are not dead yet. I mean, that's astonishing. They've got 18 points and they're not dead quite yet. So let's just see. There's still plenty at stake, and I actually think if Kristiansund could get into 14th spot, they're 5 points off it with 3 games left. Then I think they've got the best chance of all them 3 to survive the playoff. But yeah, there's an awful lot riding on this Sandefjord versus HamKam game. Obviously, if HamKam win it, then they're safe. So let's see what happens there.
Yeah, that's the big one, isn't it, this week at Sandefjord, HamKam. Good luck to Tom Dent and the team there. I'm going to ask you a few listener questions to wrap it up. See, we've got quite a few.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Number 1. Well, where do I start, actually? First one I'll say is, just want to give a bit of a shout out to at History Russia. He says, fair play to Häcken. They've been solid, consistent, entertaining, worthy winners in my opinion. Djurgården and perhaps AIK have been impacted by European competition, and Hammarby annoyingly fickle as always. I know he's a Hammarby supporter. So thank you for your comment there. Unfortunately, you were right. You did predict them to bottle it, and they have. Sadly for you and all Badging fans. Steve, first question we have is from Andy Martin at FPL Tactician. Loyal listener, very good follow as well if you like FPL. Very good on fantasy. If Christensen do go down, and I'm still not sure they will, would you expect a season like Brand have had in the Obos?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Andy. They're not going to have as good a season as Brand have had. 1 loss, 25 wins out of 29. But I could see them going down and coming straight back up, yes, because if we look at the teams in recent years that go down to this division, the first couple of years down here are usually quite easy for them. And there's often a lot of immediate bounce back promotion. Starbeck, I may as well congratulate them now, actually. They are now to 55 points, 3 clear of K from Oslo with 1 game left. But they've got a goal difference, which is 16 goals better. So they're effectively up. So well done to Starbeck and Lars Bahinen. Mjøndalen obviously went down this year. And
He's had a massive impact, hasn't he? Since he went there.
Yeah, he has. Yeah, he has, actually. I mean, he's not been in charge for long, but
they weren't
he's not lost a game.
Places, were they, when he left? When he joined?
He's not. Yeah, they sacked Eric Schoner after round 20. 3-2 loss to Stjørdalsblink, but Heenan's not lost a game yet. He's won 6 out of 9, and he's also kept 6 clean sheets. So, yeah, fair play to Lars Bahinen, who's done the business there. But they were always fancied to go well this year. I think the squad was always there for Starbeck, but still, nevertheless, to come in mid-season and do what he's done is magnificent achievement there. But yeah, point being, teams that go down usually do quite well. Mjøndalen are down there in 8th place, and they've had a really turbulent year. Obviously, sacked Vegard Hansen after 17 years, but they started the year with 7 wins out of 8. So I think, they'll probably rebound quite well next year. Christiansen don't have the resources that Brand have, but are they really going to lose many players if they go down, Christiansen? Probably not that many. And I'd imagine they'll have a very good chance of at least finishing in the top 6. So probably a very good chance of finishing in the top 2. So I could certainly see them winning the league, Andy. Yes, not to the same level of Brand. I think probably 60 points will win the league next year. But
great stuff.
I think they'll go well, yeah, if they do go down.
Next question. Thank you so much, Andy. Next question for you, Steve. Well, I want to know your Division 2 surprises. Obviously, we just talked about Starbeck, team overs out here for football. Any from your league, apart from Starbeck were relegated last season, so they're bouncing straight back. But any other shocks?
I think the big surprise is Fredrikstad, who finished so low, or it's going to be no better than 12th place, and a lot thought they'd be in the playoffs. So disappointing year for them, but they've survived, which is kind of what they needed to do in the end. Probably Brandheim and Mjøndalen have been disappointing so far. Both teams can still qualify for the playoff, but they need other results to go their way with 1 match left. I wouldn't say there's been that many shocks, to be honest. Everyone thought Brand was going to win the league. Everyone thought Starbeck was going to get 2nd place. That's what's happened. And I think that most of the playoff teams were quite predictable as well. Start, K from Oslo. You got your likes of Sandnes, Ranheim, and Mjøndalen are in there. Probably Kongsvinje is maybe the surprise. They're in 5th place right now. I think they're near enough confirmed in the playoffs because they've got a decent goal difference. So probably Kongsvinje are the pleasant surprise. And Sogndal, who are managed by the former Chelsea striker Tor Andre Flo, have perhaps been one of the big disappointments, especially in the last couple of games where they lost against already relegated Growwood. So maybe Sogndal have been a bit of an unpleasant surprise as well.
Love that. Moving on. Now, when I Google this player, there's actually already a video on YouTube that says, "Welcome to Roma." It's Ola Solbakken of Brune Glimt, 24-year-old Norwegian, who I'm looking at him now, and apparently his contract is up in 2 months. He will be out of contract. So that is the prelude to the question from Paul F. At Paul FOL 0718864.
It's like a telephone number, isn't it?
He says, yeah, I don't know if it's his phone number, but he says, has Solbakken signed a pre-contract with Roma or Napoli? There was a lot of rumours, but never seen it confirmed where he is going. And do you think he is good enough to succeed in Serie A? Now, just on his comment there, Steve, Paul does actually have a point. There's a lot of when you Google Solbakken, there's a lot of stuff saying he's already signed for Roma. He's already expected to join. I've seen one football report apparently saying that he's already joined them. A few others saying that he's already joined them. What's the latest on this?
I read an article about this last week. I was going to mention it in the episode, last week's podcast, that he has basically said he's leaving the club, whatever. He's going to run his contract down and he will be a free agent, obviously, 1st of January. And he's been linked with Roma for probably a whole year, to be honest with you. But he hasn't confirmed where he's going to go. He actually denied that he'd sorted something with Roma. So it makes me wonder if there's another club or two still sniffing around, and maybe he's still keeping his options open. Maybe he already has got something sorted. But yeah, he's going to leave Buda Glimt. And I think the manager, Kjetil Knutsen, said he was disappointed that the way it's happened. I think they were hoping to get some money for this player. So I saw a few people commenting, but you know, Glimt, you got him on a free yourself the same way, because from Ranheim, of course. Ola Solbakken is a winger. He is a 24-year-old winger who certainly has impressed he impressed against Roma last season in the Conference League. Probably one of the main reasons they're interested in him. Is he good enough for Serie A? That is a very good question, Paul. I've got a gut feeling he might not be, to be honest with you. I'm not sure about him. I think the jury's out. It's a massive step up. To go from Eliteserien level to Serie A level in one jump, I think it's a huge one. And it's not something that I don't think you can expect him to just, join the club and set the ground on fire straight away. So I'm not sure myself.
Hauga struggled, didn't he, against Hauga at Milan?
Yeah, it's a Serie A is quite a good league. I think it's actually on the up again. See, I've seen some of the teams play at Napoli. Goodness me, they are a very good team this season. And I think it's a league that's back slightly on the up again. And I think it's a difficult ask for him to go anywhere in there. Certainly a big club. And I think my gut feeling is he probably isn't good enough for one of the really big sides. If he went somewhere like mid-table, like I say, at Sassuolo or something, then maybe. But don't get me wrong, he's an asset if someone gets him. But I don't think you can expect miracles from him, I think is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, 29 games this season, 11 goals, 8 assists according to Transfermarkt, 4 Eliteserien goals, 6 in the Conference League, 1 in the qualifiers. So thank you to Paul for your question. Big jump that. Like you said, Hauga obviously went to Milan, didn't quite work out for him. We've got one or two final questions. One from Berisha Show. Another listener, sort of loyal listener of the podcast. Always enjoy your comments, Mr. It's Berisha. Disappointing season for Viking. Where do you think it's gone wrong for them? Has the loss of Veton Berisha been as major as I believe it to be? I'm biased, obviously, lol. Probably you would say you are biased considering his Twitter handle is it's Berisha. And the name of the account is Berisha Show. But Viking, Steve.
Yeah. Disappointing. I say in a podcast episode a few weeks ago, I could see them really slipping down the table because it just isn't happening for them right now. I think there's 3 factors that have happened. They lost players in the transfer window, key players such as Berisha, Sebi Olsen went as well. And they also had some bad injuries like Stensnes. There was 2 or 3 others. I think Trippic was hardly fit throughout the summer, fully fit anyway. And they had the brutal European qualifying run, which ended in heartbreaking fashion in the last minute, of course, against, who was it? Was it Slavia Prague or something like that? No, they beat Slavia Prague. I've forgotten the team that they lost to. FC Bucharest, the Romanian outfit. Anyway, it was a heartbreaking finish for them. They had a great run in Europe. And it's difficult, isn't it, when you suffer like that? But they've had like 3 wins in 18 or 19 league games. I mean, that's relegation form, isn't it? It's just fortunate for them they had such a great start to the season. And it's one of them, I think they've just got to write it off and start next season afresh. They're still in the Norwegian Cup. And they can try and win that in the spring, which will be good for them. And I think they did not replace Berisha fundamentally at all. So when you lose your best player and your top scorer and don't even bring a proper replacement in, you're asking for trouble, aren't you? So obviously it's in the winter, the prime target is to get a quality striker. But they're a club with resources. They're a club which has pulling power. And I don't know what they're going to do with the managerial situation. Let's wait and see. I expect there'll be quite a lot of changes in the off-season, but I feel like it's a club that can rebound quickly next season, and they've just got to write this one off now. But I think Sunday was almost they nearly lost to Yerv, for goodness sake, and Yerv are playing like their third game in 7 days, so very poor result for Viking. They've not been good enough recently.
Yeah, they drew 2-2 with Yerv at the weekend, as mentioned. They played Svensson and Cabran up front. My man, Mai Traore, got on the score sheet for.
Well, he's not good enough. I mean, they've tried to go with him, but I just fundamentally he's not good enough to lead a line at a club like Viking, in my opinion. So
yeah, well, he's a winger, really. I don't think he's.
Well, yeah, he is. He is a winger. Yeah, he's not out and out centre forward, is he?
Formerly of Vasalund in Sweden, that's why I know him. Third tier, was very, very good at the third tier level, and then did quite well in Superettan as well. But yeah, maybe he's struggling. Berisha, to be fair, you might not like me saying this, Mister. It's Berisha, but he's not really done it at Hammarby. I think it's been a disappointing run for him. I mentioned it in part 1, but so you could argue maybe he could have just stayed in Viking. But I think he's got a good character. I think he's a winner, and I think he works hard for the team. But it just doesn't seem to have worked for him at Hammarby. But
Patrick Bamford does that for Leeds, doesn't he? But he doesn't score goals. So
yeah,
you're a striker. You're judged on your goals, aren't you?
I don't think he's had a huge amount of service at Hammarby. I don't think I can conclude that he's not a good finisher. But I just feel like they haven't really given him the service he needs. But anyway, that could be 50, half of one. Was it half of one, half a dozen the other? 50%
6 of one and half a dozen of another.
I'm going to say 50% of one and half a dozen of the other. You can tell we're recording late in the late evening. I'm checking out now. That's it. We're done. Where can we find you, Steve?
You can find me on Twitter at MeatmanSoccer.
Yeah, and you can find me at JFFootball, JFFUTBOL. We had some nice comments this week from some listeners in Sweden, so I'm really happy about that. Hopefully, I hope you enjoyed the podcast, and we will be back next week to discuss what has happened in that big Gothenburg derby. If anyone wants to offer me a ticket to go out there, my DMs are open on Twitter. I will gladly attend that game if anyone can find me a cheap flight. But the days of £50 flights to Gothenburg are over, Steve. I think the prices.
You might have to ferry it across.
The prices were a bit beyond my budget at this moment.
Take a slow boat to Gothenburg.
Sadly, I won't be there, but I will certainly be keeping an eye on it. But thanks so much again for everyone who's listened. Really appreciate all your support. Please give it a retweet or comment or a like or a share on Twitter, on YouTube. And also just in terms of the iTunes ratings or Spotify ratings, if you could give us 5 stars, we always appreciate that. It always helps spread the word. But that'll be it. So until the next time, Steve, I hope you have a lot more whining and dining at Ellen Road. And see you again soon.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. A pleasure as always. Take care, everyone. And we'll see you next time. Goodbye.